Good afternoon and welcome to ORL Split A, Season 14, Round 4, as we make our way to Suzuka in Japan for our second 100% short race of the season. As per usual, I'm Yusuf Milky Cyril bin Sahel, joined by Jacob Alida Hancocks. Jacob, how are you doing this wonderful evening?
I'm doing as well as ever. And yeah, very much looking forward to the second 100% race of the season. I commentated the first one, I ought to know. But yeah, no, I do like running on these short tracks. It gives us something a little bit different, something different to what some of the other leagues are doing, and something you don't get to see too much of. And I think today it's going to be an extra spicy one.
Yeah, it's going to be super spicy. The Japan short track, the shortest on the entire calendar. We're talking 33-second lap times, and that's going to play a huge impact when it comes to working out strategies.
Yes, indeed. And with those lap times, if you're running towards the back of the field and you pit, there's a chance you're going to get lapped with the way the field spread works. And especially if you fall a little bit further back of the field. If you pick up front wing damage on the opening lap in some incident, you probably are going to get lapped. So it is very weird situation, and drivers have to sort of really be careful with how they're going to play around that.
Yeah. And with that, let's take a quick look back to the results from last week, where it was Danny Haddad who, Patrick Krutic, who was able to take the win ahead of Danny Haddad, and Alvaro Caraton, who wasn't very happy with his result when we interviewed him after the race. And I mean, you can understand why, leading the championship, a good opportunity to build this lead over Danny Berejne, but with that rain coming down at an awkward time, he wasn't able to fully capitalize on it.
Yeah, and you say building that lead over Danny Berejne, but the two drivers behind him in the championship now are the two who finished ahead of him in that race, in the form of Krutic and Haddad, both in second and third respectively. So he has to worry about them as well. It's not just Danny Berejne that's coming for Alvaro Caraton at the top end of the order. And yeah, of course, he would have loved to win, but he's finished fourth, first, and third thus far this season. That is a good record, considering how tough the level of competition we have here is.
And I think it just shows as well how close the championship is, that once you do get the likes of Patrick Krutic, who had only had a 5th and a 7th before this race, being able to pick up a win, he jumps right up in the standings, all the way up into second, tied actually with Danny Haddad at 14 points behind Alvaro Caraton.
Yeah, indeed. And that's, not a huge gap between them and Caraton. It's a sizable gap, and it's unlikely to be overthrown in one race unless Caraton has a real disaster. But it is going to be interesting to see, particularly with Daniele Haddad, whether he can stay up there, whether Patrick Krutic can or not. Again, the first couple of races, he didn't necessarily show the pace of the absolute front runners. He was sort of second-tier driver on most of those tracks. He really came up big in Austria, of course, but benefited through strategy. Thoroughly deserving win, though, of course. But Daniele Haddad has always been there or thereabouts in terms of pace, at least at the beginning of the races. He has some wheel issues and tends to maybe use a bit more ERS than some of the other drivers, maybe burn up those tires a little bit as well. But in general, his pace is up there. So if he can just find one more gear, he could well be starting to win races.
And with that, no, drivers are making their way out to the track. And before we jump into qualifying, we're just going to be taking a short commercial break. We'll be back in about a minute's time.
All right, I'm ready.
Let's do this.
Time to farm some dubs. Crap, I got a squad on my right.
Running in for backup.
Yo, Ronnie, he's right there in front of you.
Oh, sorry guys, it happened again.
Damn. This is the 10th one today.
All right, I'm back.
Someone cover me.
Yeah, I see you. You got him. You got him. You got him. Yes! Yo, that's sweet.
Yeah, it is. We about to win this.
Guys, I can get used to this.
HyperX alloy. Built strong because it has to.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, as we jump on in to qualifying. And it is, as you can see, very wet.
Indeed, yeah. Very slick circuit here in Suzuka. You can just see how sort of jet black the track looks in these conditions as well. And these drivers are going to be struggling here, of course. As you got the S section still remains from the main Suzuka track. Once you get to the end of it, instead of going left up the hill, or rather, you go a little bit left up the hill before then taking a right turn here, right here, and then back onto skipping the Casio triangle and onto the main straight you go. So you can see just how short a lap it is around here. And no sort of really major traction zones either, which might help the drivers a little bit in the wet.
Yeah, and well, we'll have to see whether the race is dry or wet. And you know, we were talking about how short this track is. Very difficult to overtake in the dry. I'm not sure how it would play out when it's raining.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, usually it tends to be the case that it's even more difficult to overtake in the wet than it is in the dry on the game in general, as Jarno Opmeer, who has rejoined us, by the way, for this race and ongoing throughout the season. Jarno Opmeer taking one of the seats in the Mercedes instead of Matthias Vipic. He's gone to the top of the order, narrowly ahead of Daniele Haddad and Alessio Di Capua in third.
Yeah, and Jarno Opmeer is showing exactly why he is the current Season 12 and Season 13 champion. And maybe he might be finding himself being the Season 14 champion as well. He's only 55 points behind Alvaro Caraton at the moment. And, well, knowing the pace that Jarno can bring, could probably close that gap down. Currently, we're seeing just over a second separating the 20 drivers on circuit.
Yeah, and of course, Matthias Vipic is still here, but he's just driving the Red Bull for today rather than the Mercedes, which he very graciously ceded to Jarno Opmeer, given that he has recently signed for Mercedes, of course, as an esports driver. So, of course, wanting to represent the correct brand here in ORL as well. Here is our championship leader, Alvaro Caraton, who is just coming to the end of what will be his fourth flying lap on this set of extreme wet tyres. He comes across the line and moves up into second driver to get below that 40-second.
Yeah, Danny Haddad is on an out lap, a cool down lap before he starts a new lap. And what we are seeing is that no matter who you ride on board with, there's always someone who's having to get out of the way in the middle of the S's. It's super, super difficult to get a clear lap.
Indeed, yeah, it is very, very difficult because it's just so crowded, this circuit. It's such a small circuit with just as many drivers on it as usual, just as many cars to get in your way, and even more so perhaps in the wet conditions when everyone wants to be out there pretty much the whole time because there's not really a reason not to be out there the whole time. You're not going to burn up the tyres that quickly, especially when the lap is so short, so you can just pound round and round and round, and there's not much point in just waiting in the pits, and there's only 4 drivers sitting in the pits at the moment. Daniel Haddad hasn't encountered too much traffic over this lap. Did have a bit of a moment, but comes up towards the line and does improve, making it into third there.
Yeah, Alessio Di Capua is on a lap, and, you know, it's still 3 sectors. Jarno forced to get out of the way of Alessio, and struggling to do so. A couple of drivers considering those intermediate tyres, potentially Joni Tormala and Arox for AlphaTauri, but Alessio Di Capua through the final corner, currently sitting in 7th. And will improve to third, 2,000 quicker than Danny Haddad.
Nicely done there by Alessio. And the times are tumbling down as the cars are getting rid of some of that water, as the drivers are getting their eye in the conditions, the fuel loads running down as well. So we will expect to see the drivers improving lap after lap after lap, and then probably a big jump of improvement if and when they go onto a second set of tyres later in the session.
Yep. Also, at the moment, currently Felipe at the back end. But again, 9/10 to Jarno Opmeer, but then again, very short track, and those gaps that we'd usually talk about, you know, wouldn't we say, you know, the entire field separated by 0.8 of a second? Here, we'd expect it to be pretty much half that, because we're talking about half the time to complete a lap.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, very low times across the board. As Domi, another one of our new drivers, is up there in 6th at the moment, jumping into the second seat in the Racing Point alongside Daniele Haddad. That is 2 Italian drivers in the Racing Point outfit. And I believe the last time that team in its various forms had an Italian driver in real life, that was probably Giancarlo Fisichella in 2009, unless I'm very much mistaken. Maybe they had Liuzzi later on.
True. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd count him as an Italian driver, but doesn't sound terribly Italian to me. His name does, to be fair. Here comes Joni Tormala, though, across the line, who doesn't sound terribly Italian either, and that's because he's Finnish, and he has finished that lap as well and gone up into 9th.
And don't forget, most of the drivers are on these intermediate tyres, but they're still unable to match the lap that Jarno Opmeer was able to set on those full wet. So clearly the track is improving and will be getting quicker and quicker. And if that continues throughout the rest of the session, it's going to be a case of he who sets the last lap sets the fastest lap.
Yeah, well, it might well be. I mean, at this point, though, the top few drivers are staying up there as the main contenders right now. The Jarno Otmir and Alvaro Carreton still locking out the front row, having yet to set lap times on their inters. There's that Joni Tormela who just came up into third on his second go-round on the green-walled intermediate tyres. So he found some significant improvement there. But yeah, the margins of improvement that you're going to find, because the track is so short, they're not going to be so dramatic as they would usually be. So those who are at 40.6 are actually, they have a lot more to find than they would usually if they were sort of, 8/10 away from pole at any other circuit.
Yeah, precisely so. As we see Arox jumping to the top of the standings, 39.7. And I think that is a clear of an indicator as any that it is a time for intermediate tyres, as one of the Haas forced to steer well clear of Arox as he continues to set some quick laps.
Yeah, Alvaro Carreton's just started a flying lap. Jarno Otmir here currently on an out lap. Ben Sabo-Konyi as well, who we just jumped on board with there, is in 5th place in the drivers' standings right now, but currently down in 11th in qualifying. So after a relatively poor race last time, only finishing 7th in Austria, never really looking like he was going to be up there in the top end of the order, he'll be hoping for a better return here at the Japanese short circuit. And as he comes across the line, what's this first attempt on the Inter is going to be actually slower, or did he invalidate?
He invalidated going into turn 8. He took a lot of a curb, and I'd be very surprised if that wasn't the point where he did invalidate, as Getto getting well out of the way through turn 1. And Matthias Vipic will do the same. And Ben Sabo-Konyi, that sector 1 time. Sector 1 is literally just turn 1 and 2. That's it. 15 seconds. And I guess it's a good way of seeing exactly where you are losing time around the circuit.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we can actually probably get a better idea of where the drivers are losing time relative to one another. Jarno Otmir just goes back onto first position on the left-hand side there, ahead of Daniele Haddad. So they have just reasserted themselves at the top end of the order. Alvaro Carreton has not been able to do so, as Ben Sabo-Konyi moved up in a 6th, but that got shifted down very quickly as the times are updating at a mile a minute right now. Alessio Di Caprio at 3rd, Joni Tormela 4th. Alvaro Carreton did manage to improve, but only as far as 5th, make that 6th. As someone else, is that Arsene who's gone to the top of the order?
That is Arsene Kardanov who's jumped to the top. Matthias Kologon able to improve by a little bit, 39.4. And Jarno Otmir just improves by 0.003 of a second. The times are tumbling here, and it's just whoever's able to adapt quicker with 7 minutes on the clock. I wonder if maybe we'll see the track improving at an alarming rate that might even see slicks on that final lap.
That would be fascinating if we could see someone desperately trying to get out there on slicks at the very end. It doesn't look like we're going to quite get to that point, but the rain doesn't seem to be coming down very hard, if at all, right now. There's still a little bit of raindrops coming down onto the circuit, actually, so I don't think we're going to see dry, slick conditions. Here comes Jarno Otmir then, through what is the final corner and straight into the pit lane. So had enough of this set of intermediates. The drivers have been mentioning that it's very, very difficult to keep the left front tyre in a decent temperature window. So a lot of them will be struggling with that, and sometimes they might even be coming into the pits here, even when the tyres aren't very worn, just to get rid of an overheated set of tyres.
Yeah, precisely so. And of course that was in the dry. I wonder if in the wet you can actually keep that front and left tyre cool just a little bit by going offline, as Domi said it's a fantastic lap, 39.0, and Arsene Kardanov just beats that by a 1/10 of a second almost instantaneously. So the track conditions still improving, it seems. Either that or the drive is slowly getting more and more accustomed to the conditions.
It's surely going to be a bit of both, but all 3 of those drivers have just completed another lap recently, and they all moved ahead of the likes of Carreton, Otmir, Di Caprio, who we would expect to be populating the front few slots on the grid after they all came into the pits. So, yeah, and is that another one going up to the very top? Daniele Haddad taking that top spot away from Arsene Kardanov. So, yeah, time's really just all over the place, chopping and changing. Very, very hard to keep track of right now.
Yeah, we just saw Patrick Krutic trying to carry too much speed through turn 1, going sideways. Felipe on a lap right now, currently on a 39.435, as Arox has just jumped up into a second. But the grid is closed down more and more. We're now talking about 0.8 separating the whole field. And Felipe, that's not how you want to be taking that corner. He's going to dive on into the pits.
Yeah, decided that either he was always coming into the pits or that just how bad that corner was, decided to change his mind and head back into the pits, get a new set of tyres on. Here is Patrick Sipos, the Hungarian driver from the F1 Esports Challenger Series, who are currently going around in 13th for the time being, having just been put another slot down as someone moved ahead. I think that was Mr. Anker going up into 10th. Here is Jarno Opmeer commencing his first flying lap on this second set of intermediate tyres when Patrick Sipos goes up in a second there in the Haas.
Yeah, I actually moved away from Patrick Sipos. I didn't think he was pushing. He wasn't actually running any ERS through the S's, whereas when you look at Jarno Opmeer right now, you look at that yellow bar, you can see the number 2. He is running overtake. So interesting that some drivers are opting for different ERS modes on their hot laps, and Jarno Opmeer is a 4/10 up as he makes his way into the final corner, nice and patient on the throttle before you straighten up the car. Of course, no DRS in the wet conditions. A 38.4 for the Dutchman.
Nice lap time there for Jarno Opmeer, comfortably fastest at the time being. Daniel Haddad in second. Arox puts himself up into third, ahead of Corny here in the Alfa Romeo.
And Corny's actually a 10th up right now, so this should be enough to see him maybe even jump ahead of Danny Haddad. And right as I say that, Alessio Di Capua and Joni Tormala second and third, and Corny will go up to 5th, and that's instantly beaten by Matthias Collegon. Who else is probably going to be on a lap? I wonder what Domi will be able to do. He was fairly high up the order not too long ago.
Yeah, a few drivers have been popping up here and there. Domi goes up into 6th, but there have been a few mainstays at the very, very top end of the order. Jarno Opmeer and Alessio Di Capua, to name 2. Alvaro Caraton's always been there or thereabouts as well. Daniel Haddad has tended to be, but he has left it a little bit later to get out on this second set of intermediate tyres. So he will be a little bit behind the curve in terms of improvement, but I'm sure he will find himself back up towards the front few slots before we get to the very end of qualifying. But this is going to be a truly mad dash to the end here. Does anyone who's currently out there on tyres also want to use another fresh set? They have time to go back in, do another outlap. It's a very short lap, of course, so you can leave it quite late to go on to the freshest set of tyres available to you. And I wonder if that's what we're going to see some of these guys doing, as Andy comes across the line and up into 10th. Patrick Krutij goes into 11th.
Yep, and as you say that Jarno Opmeer dives on into the pits. Oh, Domi's giving a nice slipstream to Danny Haddad, and that can be the difference between quite a few positions. We're talking thousands of a second separating multiple drivers. You look from Matthias Collegon in a P6, there is 3 thousandths between himself and Matthias Vipic. So that slipstream is more than a few thousandths. It's probably a few hundredths, maybe not a tenth in the wet conditions, but it could be a huge, huge difference. And let's see what Danny Haddad can pull out.
Yeah, at the moment, though, Jarno Opmeer, Alvaro Caraton, make that Ben Zabuconyi is that who's gone into second there, ahead of Alvaro Caraton. It is Daniele Haddad up towards the line, and he... Where does he go?
38.2. He's gone up to provisional pole by over a tenth from Jarno Opmeer. That's an absolutely fantastic time from the Racing Point driver.
Indeed, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm getting a rather interesting error on my screen where I'm seeing 2 Jarno Opmeers at the top of the order, so apologies for that one. But yeah, Daniele Haddad going to the top, Ben Zabuconyi in third, Arsene Cardinov fourth. Patrick Sipos has gone back up towards the front slots as well, into 5th, so the Hungarian having a good run of it here.
Yeah, he is indeed. So who else is on a lap? I mean, you talked about Arsene Cardinov. He's going to dive on into the pits. No, he is not. I think he was a little bit up on his previous time. 38.4, improves by 3 thousandths of a second, which is enough to get him ahead of Ben Zabuconyi. Okay, there you go. Domi jumping up the order. We saw both of the Racing Point drivers giving each other slipstream, and it has clearly worked out for them.
Yeah, they're currently 1 and 2 at the moment, the all-Italian Racing Point lineup. And this would be a very, very good debut for those two as a team if they wanted to take the front 2 slots on the grid. Daniel Haddad, not a debut for him, of course, in ORL. He has been around for quite a while here. As Jarno Opmeer commences the initial flying lap, but not at very much speed, letting others through. So wanting another lap to warm up these tyres by the look of things.
I wonder if drivers are just heading out of the pits now and just staying on track so that they can be in the perfect position to be the last driver who crosses the line. Again, we're talking about Suzuka short, a track where it's going to be phenomenally difficult to overtake at all. And track position is going to be absolute crucial. We're talking more important than track position at Monaco.
Yeah.
This qualifying session, this final minute and a half is going to be so impactful.
Yeah, I think Jarno's giving himself 2 runs, and the final run will be starting almost exactly when the checkered flag falls here. So is he going to come up to the line? There's going to be, what, about 40 seconds remaining. He's timed it almost perfectly. There's going to be 3 seconds thereabouts once he comes across the line after this lap before the qualifying flag comes down, which should mean he gets the literal last lap in this qualifying session if he's timed it right.
Yeah, the Predator, will he be able to strike again? His debut race this season for ORL. Of course, he is the Season 13 champion. Didn't race in the first 3 rounds, but he has returned to, we assume, defend his crown. And can he match what the Racing Point drivers have done? They're into the pits. They won't be able to challenge him. Jarno Opmeer to complete his first lap. It's a 38-1, and it will see him jump to the top of the standings. What can Alvaro Carreton do? He's a 10th up, and he might be able to pip Jarno Opmeer, but we assume Jarno Opmeer will be doing 1 more lap after this. Alvaro Carreton across the line, not able to improve by enough.
Yeah, just down in 5th for Alvaro Carreton. Corny just went up into 4th. That's ahead of Alessio Di Caprio, who's going to be disappointed down in 7th. Ben Savuconi 8th. Patrick Krutig, our debut winner last time out, down in 9th, with Patrick Shippos falling a little bit at the end there into 10th. There's Jarno Opmeer pushing. Daniele Haddad comes across the line, and it's only 2nd for him. And with that, there's only Getoned left who can potentially challenge Jarno Opmeer, and I'd be very surprised if he's going to do it. Indeed, he's into the pits. So Jarno Opmeer takes pole position with Daniele Haddad alongside.
Wow, Jarno Opmeer, Daniele Haddad separated by just over 100th of a second. We've seen closer battles, but in these changeable conditions where the track was consistently improving, 9/10 separates the entire field. And I have a feeling that the race might be determined quite simply by that run into T1.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing about turn 1 here as well is it's very, very difficult corner to get right. Very hard to judge, but you can go 2, maybe even 3 wide into that corner as well, and on the exit. So there's a lot of potential for drivers to be able to get one over on each other into that corner, and we might see some people getting a little bit too ambitious up the inside as well.
And on that note, we will be heading into a short break, and when we're back, we will be bringing you the entirety of the race uninterrupted until the very end. Jarno Opmeer will be lining on pole ahead of Daniele Haddad. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, as we jump into the race, and the skies have cleared. There are no clouds to be seen, and we're going to be having a dry race, presumably to the very end. Our second 100% race of the season, and Jarno Opmeer returns back on that front row of the grid with Danny Haddad alongside him.
Yeah, and this is what I always like to see. A wet qualifying with a dry race. That is, to me, the ideal. A wet qualifying is great because it challenges the drivers to the maximum, brings them outside of their comfort zones, and adds a little bit of extra sort of permutations into the qualifying. And then when you get into the race, you don't want the wet race to dampen your spirits and prevent you from being able to overtake. So this way, you get the best of both worlds.
Yep. And we can see the strategies that all the drivers have opted for. Jarno Opmeer, Danny Haddad, and Domi all opting for the medium tires, but Arsen Kardanov and Alvaro Carreton opting for the hard tires. Now, this is going to be an extremely short formation lap, so we should probably just explain the strategies really, really quickly here. And with those strategies, of course, short lap, Jacob, we're talking about 33 seconds. If you pit and you're not in that top 5, you might be finding yourself a lap down.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're at the very back, you don't want to pit too early, but some of those, the only guys that have gone for the soft tires are the ones towards the back. So the likes of Andy, Felipe, Guetta, and Chris, all the Shazoo guys, they might be vulnerable if they pit too early, so they've got to be pretty careful.
Yeah. Of course, there may be some weather on the way later. We are unaware of that. But maybe the likes of Arsene Cardinov and Alvaro Carreton opting for those hard tires have nailed their strategy. We'll have to see. The front left tire apparently wears at an alarming rate due to them just being at very high tire temperature. A lot of right turns here at Suzuka Short. And we are ready to get underway for round 4 of the championship. The revs rise, and we are underway. Jarno Otmir gets an absolutely fantastic start, exactly what he needs. In the background, one of the Ferraris coming in across the Renault, but Jarno Otmir leads from Danny Haddad and Domi. And Arsene Cardinov will have to keep Courtney, who's alongside Alvaro Carreton, running into the S's, and Carreton will be able to hold on to P5 as Ben Sabaconi dropping down the order, going to try to hold it around the outside of Patrick Sipos in the S's, and then you can see the front nose of Patrick Sipos into the Dunlop curve. Ben Sabaconi loses a position, drops down to P9.
All Hungarian battling there, and it is Patrick Sipos that takes the advantage. Lovely move from the Haas driver as we head across the line with Jarno Otmir leading at the front. And, is that into the pits already? That's Chris already into the pits. Andy into the pits as well. So two of those guys that started on the soft tyres, both getting rid of those tyres immediately.
Yeah, so maybe this was a plan for the soft tyre runners. Get a good start, pit onto the hards, and go to the very end. We'll have to see where they come out relative to the likes of Jarno Otmir, who right now is making his way through the final corner. And Inata is still in the pit, so this is a crucial moment for him. He needs to make sure that he's ahead and he does not get lapped by Jarno Otmir.
So across the line they go. It's Jarno Otmir from Daniele Haddad, Domi in third, Arsene Cardinov fourth, and Alvaro Carreton fifth. So much as we were from the starting order on the grid, as now they head their way through Sector 1. They're already out of Sector 1 and into Sector 2.
Yeah, and we talked about how this is going to be a bit of a procession. There's a yellow flag in Sector 3. And something else that we brought up is, oh yes, that is Matthias Colligon, who has retired. Something else that we brought up is if there is a virtual safety car, we are expecting everyone to dive on into the pits.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's sort of a no-brainer there with the amount of time that you'll save and the fact that you'll definitely not get lapped under those circumstances, or very unlikely to get lapped under those circumstances. It seems like it would just be a very, very good idea in general. So here's Alessio Di Caprio looking pretty close to the rear end of Corny up ahead in his first race of the season, and he's actually outperformed where you might have expected him to be in qualifying. So Corny doing a really good job there in the Alfa Romeo, keeping pace with Alvaro Carreton up ahead.
And look at Arsene Cardinov. He was very close to the rear end of Domi, but he just gets a little bit squirrely on the exit of the final corner, and that's going to compromise his ability to get a run on the Racing Point driver down into T1. Everyone, as they were on the previous lap, Gatone diving on into the pits. He's done 4 laps on his soft tyres, and he said that is enough, puts on the hards.
Yeah, it's interesting, actually. The strategy really does seem for all the soft runners just to do a few laps, not too many, and then going straight into the pits to get rid of them pretty much as early as you possibly can, and then trying to take those hards to the very end of the race, which they might well be able to do, but they will be struggling with the temperature of that front left. You can bet on that. Here is Joni Tormela as a man who's going to be very disappointed with how his qualifying went. I believe it was down in 16th on the grid, up to 13th now, with others having pitted out of the way.
Oh, Jarno Otmir has been taken.
Progress.
Danny Haddad has pulled off a move. We didn't see that happening. Apologies for that, but Danny Haddad has been able to find a way past Jarno Otmir.
Wow, and that is fascinating. This is not an easy place to overtake. So does Haddad have that much more pace in the dry here than Jarno Otmir? That would be surprising, to say the least. But Jarno Otmir will definitely not want to let Daniele Haddad get away from him at the front. But the gap is up to half a second right now. He will, of course, close him back in with the benefit of the DRS and the slipstream down towards turn 1. Arsene Cardinov looking very close behind Domi as well, but not close enough to make a move.
Something that we do talk about whenever we have wet qualifying sessions going to dry races is have the drivers opted for a wet or a dry setup. And usually we always say they opt for the setup that will be needed in the race. But maybe at a track like Suzuka Short, the drivers are thinking, hey, it doesn't matter if we have a worse strategy in the race, we're going to be able to defend our positions. As Jarno Otmir, maybe driving on a wet setup, maybe has a little bit too much downforce, and as a result is becoming a bit of a sitting duck as Arsene Cardinov closes up on to Domi. He's going to be a bit too far back, though, to have a look into turn 1.
Yeah, he pulled out of the overtake button just a little bit there at the very end of that straight. He could have potentially thought about a dive bomb, but it would have been risky, and he wants to go for a more nailed-on move next time around, or he doesn't want to make the move. As long as he's within sight of the race leader still, as long as the DRS train continues all the way up to the front, he might not want to go past Domi unless he's being held up too much, and he did look like he was getting held up rather a lot there in the final corner.
Don't forget as well, Arsene Kardinov and Alvaro Caraton are on the hard compound of tyres. Domi will just show his nose defensively. Arsene Kardinov slots him behind again, but those guys on the hard tyres, they're looking fairly pretty right now.
Yeah, and not too many gaps building throughout the field right now. Slightly larger gap between the two poles, Patrick Krutij and Matthias Vipic in 10th and 11th. But everyone up from there, almost within half a second of one another. Very, very close stuff, and even closer between Arsene and Domi there through the final corner. Once again, the Red Bull all over the rear end of that racing point. Surely, at some point soon, he's going to think about making the move.
Jarno Otmeer's gone down the inside of Danny Haddad, so it seems that the DRS is fairly effective here at Suzuka. I wasn't expecting it, but it's the only place we are seeing overtakes. It's the only place of the entire grid where one driver does not have a DRS available to them, and the driver behind it does.
Yes, so Jarno Otmeer reclaiming top spot then. And I wonder what the plan is for Jarno. Is he just going to try and absolutely drop the rest of the field now? Is he going to push as much as he can with the ERS? Or is he just going to let himself play this game of cat and mouse with Daniele Haddad back and forth and back and forth? We will see. He's looking like he's trying to gap him at the moment, but I don't think he's going to be able to do it.
Yeah, I'm sure Danny Haddad has plenty of ERS here. You can see he's got about 55% ERS available to him. In terms of ERS management, there are 2 braking zones really on the entire circuit. I don't know if that's enough to harvest your ERS, so we might be seeing drivers being in a position where they don't have much ERS and are unable to save up any to defend in the final 5 or so laps.
Indeed, yeah, but you know what, big gap. Maybe Daniel had a little bit more on that lap, but he's just going to close straight back in with the ERS and the slipstream as well, and the DRS, of course. Arsene Kardinov, once again, he's just plastered to the rear end of Domi right now. He just clearly does not want to make the move, playing the long, smart game as the Russian in the Red Bull.
Yeah. He knows he's on the harder compound of tyres. He knows he's in a good spot. He knows that his race right now is with Alvaro Caraton, and he just needs to keep him behind, and he's doing a fantastic job and on course to taking his best result of the season. His current best is that P9 that he got all the way back in the opening race. And here comes Arsene Kardinov. He has decided this is his time to make a move, and down the inside of Domi he will go and moves up into the final of the podium spot.
Finally, he makes his way past Domi. That had been coming for a fair few laps now. As we're on to lap 13 of this race, there's Ben Sabukonyi and Patrick Krutij battling. Patrick making the move, getting past Sabukonyi, but he's going to fight back around the outside here. But I don't think there's any room on the inside. In fact, almost getting rear-ended there by Matthias Vipic as well. And their battle did lose them a bit of time to Patrick Shiposh up ahead as well. Who's that into the pits? That's Daniel Haddad pitting from second.
And Alvaro Caraton will take this as an opportunity to fly past Domenico Lovecce and up into what is now a P3. So those hard tyres are working very well. Does Jarno Otmeer try to cover off Danny Haddad, or will he stay out for a bit longer? Danny Haddad will be coming out in perfectly clear air.
Yeah, where's he actually going to be relative to Andy? How far behind is the Ferrari driver going to be? It's not too far. But Daniel Haddad does maintain the position. But Andy, all those guys that pitted on the first couple of laps of the race, they're going to play spoiler to a lot of the guys like Arsene Kardinov, Alvaro Caraton, Domi, when they come into the pits. Domi is going to find himself out behind Andy and maybe even behind Getone as well.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very strange to see. Andy is within a second of Danny Haddad, but right as I say that, he drops out of range. If he can just stick with Danny Haddad, stick in that DRS, he's going to be in an absolutely phenomenal position and would have made this a pit on lap 1 strategy work beautifully.
I mean, even if he makes it into the points, honestly, that will have worked out because he started well down the order in terms of his grid position. Yellow's in Sector 2. Is that Mr. Anker? I'm noticing him dropping down the order there in the Williams. I think it might be, yet the Finn in the Williams has had an issue in the second sector. It doesn't look like any front wing damage, but he's not going to be feeling too awfully good about that.
Yep, so Jarno Otmeer still out on those medium tyres. Same for Cornelius Uticapua and Patrick Sipos. And Arsene Kardanov is really closing in onto Jarno Opmeer here. Question is, will he be able to find a way through? We're on lap 16 of 53, and I wonder, are we going to be seeing one-stop or two-stop strategies coming through? Andy within a second of a Domi as well right now.
Yeah, those hard tyres are really hanging on well compared to the mediums. Jarno Opmeer might well find himself under pressure into turn one, and he does so. That's Arsene Kardanov up the inside, and the Russian takes the lead of the race, moving Jarno Opmeer down into P2. Alvaro Caraton now will be looking to get past Jarno as quickly as possible, because he does not want to see Arsene Kardanov getting away up ahead, and he almost rear ends the reigning champion there as well. More battling further down the order, and it's all over the place. It's chaotic right now.
Absolute chaos, as you mentioned. Corny's really dropped down the order. Something's happened. He must have made contact with someone to have dropped that far back. And nobody coming into the pits with the exception of Corny. Can Alvaro Caraton have a go at Jarno Opmeer this time round? And the answer is no.
Still stuck behind him, but good news for him is that Jarno Opmeer is sticking well inside of half a second of Arsene Kardanov, so he's not losing time to the Russian out the front. There's more yellow flags on the circuit. I don't know who those are for. By the way, Daniele Haddad and Domi are together on track again. Domi has managed to clear the likes of Andy and Getoned, so he's not going to have to worry about that one any longer. As here comes Corny out of the pits, and he will have to worry about it. Felipe, Getoned, and Andy all in his way from battling with those he would like to be battling with. Is that Alvaro Caraton having an issue as well? He's falling down the order. Jarno Opmeer into the pits in the Mercedes, and Alvaro Caraton finds himself behind Arox.
Yeah, he does, but let's just keep an eye on Jarno Opmeer. You can see the racing points coming through the final corner now. Jarno Opmeer, when can he open up that, turn off that limiter? He'll come out of the pits behind Danny Haddad, behind Domi. Will he be behind Andy as well? And no, he's crucially just in front, but on 3-lap fresher hard tyres.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Andy there as well, you are not interested in trying to overtake Jarno into turn one there or anything like that. You think, just go ahead of me. My race is with the guys behind, not with the guys ahead. So Jarno Opmeer will not be finishing anywhere near Andy once we come to the checkered flag. I think we can be pretty safe in that assumption. Mr. Anchor retiring from the session from 19th and last place there. So the Finnish driver calling it a day. And yeah, I wonder what happened to Alvaro Caraton to fall all the way down. He would have been in second right now if he hadn't had that incident.
Yeah, he would have been in second, and I think Corny would have been in fourth or fifth or something. So Alfa Romeo and Williams, the drivers not having a good day. Alessio Di Capo are doing a decent job right now. And that is for Ferrari, pardon me. I always get confused sometimes. I just see the two reds, and if I don't look at the other, it's easy to get them mixed up. But Joni Tormala is now up to 5th place. Remember, he started all the way down in 16th. He was running in 13th for quite a long period of time, and he's on the back of this train that goes all the way up to Patrick Krutic in at P2. Arsene Kardanov, though, is absolutely flying.
Yeah, Arsene Kardanov is doing a great job, but Joni Tormala is doing well as well. He's ahead of several drivers that were towards the bottom end of the points when no one had pitted yet, and he's going to go past Patrick Shippos as well here into turn one. So he's on a bit of a charge, Joni Tormala. Throughout the most of qualifying, he was sort of within the top 10, and then at the very end, he just got caught out entirely, and now he's making amends in the race.
Yeah, next up is Alessio Di Capo. If he can get past Alessio, getting past Patrick Krutic, who won't have any DRS, it should be easy work for the Finn. And Alessio is fairly far back from Patrick, so he won't be getting much slipstream. Joni Tormala then, as we start lap 23 of 53, surely gets this one done. Down the inside of Alessio he goes, and job done as easily as that.
Yeah, well done to Joni Tormala. So 2 positions in 2 laps, and he's going to be taking a 3rd one at the end of this one, you'd have to imagine. And then he can look to try and close down Arsene Kardanov at the front, trying to surmount that rather large margin that the Russian has been able to build back to Patrick Krutic in second. Of course, we don't know how much that's going to benefit Arsene when he comes into the pits and has to go on a set of medium tyres to the end of this race. But he could go for a bit of a charge with those at the very end as well.
Yeah, he could for sure. Also noticing that Alvaro Caraton very close to Ben Sabaconi. He recently was able to find a way past Arox for what is currently P8. Then he had Dad and Domi, along with Jarno Opmeer, currently 12 seconds behind this train of cars.
Yeah, Jarno Opmeer also, if I'm not mistaken, in DRS range of Domi there, in 12th. So that is good news for him that he's managed to catch straight back up to the Racing Point pairing. And there's Alvaro Caraton, really close behind Ben Sabukonyi, who seems to have been, half the time we've seen someone getting overtaken, it's been Ben Sabukonyi. Maybe not feeling it quite so much in the race as he was qualifying in the Renault there, and he might find himself falling prey to the Spaniard in the Williams. As he forces his way up the inside towards turn 1 and will make the move stick there on the Renault driver.
Yeah, Alvaro Caraton up to P7 after whatever misfortunes befell his way. Seeing him drop down the order, would have been in P2 within a second of Arsene Gardenov, but finds himself all the way down, languishing in 7th place with his race in jeopardy. And Arox is also closing in onto Ben Sabukonyi as Joni Tormala still 5/10 behind Patrick Krutic and unable to find a way past. The pair of them have actually pulled over a second to Alessio Di Capua.
Indeed, yeah. No, they are starting to pull away. Alessio Di Capua struggling then on those tyres and dragging Patrick Shiposh, Matthias Vipic, Alvaro Caraton, Ben Sabukonyi and Arox all down with him as well, unless he can get back within DRS range of Tormala and Krutic. This is great news for those two. That is happening further behind. There's Jano Otmir getting past Domi into turn 1. So he's made light work then of one of the racing points. Will he do the same to Daniel Haddad the next lap through?
Yeah, we'll have to see. Of course, Danny Haddad and Jano Otmir were just playing cat and mouse beforehand. We'll see whether that does continue in the second stint of the race. And unfortunately for Racing Point, they can't just play the DRS game. They can't just continuously switch positions to try to keep Jano Otmir behind.
No, indeed, it seems not. And it seems like overtaking really is actually coming quite naturally to these drivers at this circuit, which is not necessarily something we were expecting. Even within DRS trains, people are able to dump the overtake and make moves on other people. And they're very willing to do so as well, which isn't something we see at that many other circuits either. So it is providing us with a rather different spectacle, this race, but I'm very much enjoying it for the time being.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see how these people who are dumping their ERS will be faring come the end of the race, because I still stand by it being a difficult track to harvest energy at. You've got 2 corners where you can really, you know, save up that ERS, but then at the same time, there's only one place where you're using ERS, so I think the ERS game is a very interesting one as well.
Yeah, for sure, and some definitely managing it better than others at this stage, and that is one of the things that separates the really great drivers from the absolute best, is how well they can manage their ERS, when to dump it, when to hold on to it. And right now, Arox holding on to it, despite the fact he's very, very close behind Ben Sabukonyi.
Speaking of holding it, Patrick Krutic unable to hold P2 against Joni Tormala, who has finally got clear of the Mercedes driver, and now 4.7 seconds behind Arsene Gardenov. Can he close that gap? These guys have done almost 30 laps on their hard tyres, so they've only got about 24 to do on the mediums if they were to switch tyre compound now.
Pablo Hoglar in 17th place just set the fastest lap of the race, but that was stolen away by Joni Tormala now that he's in clean air. Even though he's on older hard tyres, he is setting the pace in this race right now. It's not Daniel Haddad, Jano Otmir, Domi, the guys we would expect on the relatively fresh hard tyres. So Joni Tormala's tyres definitely holding on very, very well, and maybe that's part of the reason he was able to just climb his way up rung after rung up through the field. Alvaro Caraton is having a sniff at the rear end of Patrick Shiposh there.
And I think Patrick Shiposh is going to be looking for a way past Alessio Di Capua, as Patrick is going to dive on into the pits. 29 laps. Is there too many for him on those medium tyres? Will he be able to put on the softs, or is it going to be hards that he has to take it to the end of the race? Also, let's see if he feeds out behind the likes of Arsene Gardenov, because he's about 10 seconds behind the Red Bull driver. So if it's a 23-second pit stop, he's going to be out in dirt. Yeah, it is the soft tyres going on for the Haas driver.
Yeah, so softs to the end from this point. We haven't really seen how well those tyres hold up. The mediums don't seem to hold up that well at all. Alessio Di Capua and Ben Sabukonyi are struggling on those tyres at this stage. So I'm surprised to see softs to the end here, but maybe they will work.
Yep, well, the softs are on, and crucially, Patrick Shiposh is about 5 seconds ahead of Arsene Gardenov on a circuit. Is it that closer with these drivers getting lapped or not? And Patrick Shiposh actually behind Corny. I'm not sure if he's just been overtaken for position. Let's see, he's slotting right behind, and we'll be looking for a way through. DRS open and down the inside.
Yeah, that move is about as simple as they get, getting past the similarly engined Haas car there. Alessio Di Capua coming out significantly behind there on his fresh set of soft tyres, so he'll have to get past Corny before he can look to start chasing down Patrick Shiposh again. So the undercut is going to be very, very powerful, even with such a short lap. the difference in tire performance is mega. And Patrick will have to make those work in a big way. He's already climbed right up to the rear end of Getone, so he'll want to dispatch his teammate pretty quickly and then start pumping in the lap times in that 5-second gap between Getone and Andy. Meanwhile, Jano Otmay was having a look at Daniele Haddad.
Yeah, Jano getting very close to Danny Haddad, and Domenico Lovecchia still close behind, and Andy Nater there as well. And don't forget, Andy's been on these tires now for 30 laps, and you know, at the start he was falling back from these three, but after those first 4 laps or so, where those hard tires, or the drive's really seemingly able to push the hard tires, he's been able to close back up, and if he can take those tires to the end, he could be looking for that P4 spot, as here comes Jano Otmay down the inside, and the game of cat and mouse between the Dutchman and Danny Haddad will continue.
Yeah, Jano retaking what is de facto race lead in this race, because everyone ahead of them still has to pit. So it's Jano Otmay from Daniele Haddad, Domi, and Andy then. Andy, if he can make it to the end on those hard tires, and, you know, the fact that Joni Tormala has been setting fastest laps on his very aged hard tires, that strikes a really positive note for Andy at this stage, as here comes Patrick Sippos at the inside of his teammate. They make contact through the final corner. Getone was not giving that one up easily, that is for sure. And Alessio Di Caprio is going to be pretty interested in what's going on here between the two Haas teammates as well, as Getone will try and get back past Patrick Sippos and does so. So Getone really not giving his teammate any service right now. That's Alessio Di Caprio running wide in the first corner and picking up his first 3-second time penalty of the race. Only him and Chris with penalties at this stage.
And Patrick Sippos with those fresh soft tires, so I can make the move into the final corner. I'll have DRS and it's all good. But Getone saying it doesn't matter because I've got slipstream and I'll dump my ERS to stay ahead. But this time round, Patrick Sippos is behind and will have DRS himself, although he has to be careful because here comes Alessio Capua. Down is inside, and he will take the advantage and the opportunity that the Hungarian Grantsman moves up to P12.
Yeah, that's good. That's actually kind of a disaster there for Patrick Sippos. He would have been, I mean, he's directly racing Alessio Di Capua to the end, of course. Alessio does have that 3-second time penalty, so as long as Patrick can stay with him to the end of the race, he will inherit that position. But they need to be concentrating on getting past Getone. Every lap they spend behind a 30-lap-old set of hard tires on their fresh softs is a lap wasted, and they need to get past as quick as they can.
Yeah, they really do. And right now, these three are 5 seconds behind Andinator and that group that goes all the way up to Jano Otmay, who is in the effective race lead. Joni Tormala, 4.5 seconds behind Arsen Kardanov, has not been able to bring down that gap. One man who has been bringing down the gap is Alvaro Caraton, who is now 3 seconds behind Patrick Kutic. And if memory serves me correctly, that gap was about 4 seconds not too long ago.
Yeah, Arsen Kardanov to Joni Tormala, that gap's not really decreasing much either. I expected Joni to get past Patrick Kutic and then start absolutely mullering the gap between himself and Arsen Kardanov, but not to be. The Russian is driving such a strong race out there at the front at the moment, as Alessio Di Capua still isn't close enough to Getone to get past either. These softs not delivering the level of performance that maybe some of the drivers would have been expecting here, struggling to make any sort of work of that Haas car up ahead on those really quite old hards. There's a couple of drivers into the pits. Is that Alvaro Caraton and Arox heading into the pits to get rid of their hard tires?
Yeah, let's see where they come out. They're going to be wanting to come out ahead of this group, as I wonder if it's just a case of these tires overheating ever so slightly. Alvaro Caraton coming out of the pits. He's going to be feeding out right behind this battle by a few seconds, and crucially ahead of the likes of Corny and Ben Sabukoni, who are actually running side by side as Ben Sabukoni moves up into P13.
Yeah, soft tires against hards, and Bence makes the move into 13th. Alvaro Caraton ahead went for medium tires instead of soft, so that is interesting call there from the Williams driver, going a different way to everyone else who's pitting at this stage of the race. By the way, where everyone's filtering out from these pit stops, Arsen Kardanov is going to be coming out not too far behind Andy, unless I'm very much mistaken. So when he comes out on very, very fresh tires, he has a very realistic chance of winning this race.
Yeah, and it'll all come down as that's Joni Tormala into the pits. Remember, he was about 4 seconds behind Arsen Kardanov. So this is going to give us the best indicator that we can possibly get of where Arsen Kardanov will come out when he does pit. So Joni Tormala then, a lap of 41. He's pitted, he's put on the soft tires. That's going to be the racing points flying by, along with Jano Otmay. And there's Joni Tormala. I tell you what, Arsen Kardanov, might be ahead of Andy. He might be ahead of Domi as well.
He's going to be in that train of cars, and that is fantastic news for him. He is pumping in incredible lap times right now in the Red Bull. Surely he'll want to come into the pit sooner rather than later, but it just seems like those hard tires, once you get past the first 10 laps, a 10-lap old set of hard tires is the same as a 40-lap old set of hard tires. And Arsen Kardinov is making them work so beautifully right now. Patrick Krutij and Matthias Vipic, the two Polish drivers coming into the pits. It's going to be softs for Krutij and mediums for Vipic as they're going to funnel out further down the order. Alvaro Carreton, by the way, did get past Patrick Schippos last time around as well, as the Hungarian isn't having such a good time of it on these soft tires as he did earlier. And here is Arsen Kardinov into the pits. It is going to be the softs.
Yeah, soft tires are going on. He thinks he can take them to the end, and to be fair, it's pretty much a 10-lap dash. It did look like a slow stop, Jacob, but I just wonder if that is the game glitchy. There you can see Jarno Otmir coming through the final corner. Let's ride on board and see if we can see Arsen Kardinov feeding out of the pits as quickly as he can, and maybe